So you're planning on moving abroad, and moving to any other country outside of your home country can be scary and intimidating. And I should know, I moved thousands of miles away from the US to the Netherlands in less than a year. So whether you're in the planning stages of moving abroad, or you're constantly telling yourself that one day you'll make the move, but that one day keeps getting pushed further and further into the vague distance, I think that sharing my story on how I moved abroad in a quick way would be pretty useful. So feel free to get cozy, maybe grab a warm drink, and we'll talk through how I moved to Europe in less than a year. So 2023 was my catalyst, and I think we all have a catalyst or a breaking point that makes us want to make the move from our home country to a new country. And my breaking point in the US was obviously last year. 2023 was not a great year. I mean, it's still not a great year, but it was especially not a great year. And there were a long list of things that made me want to move, mainly politics, increased violence, and just a general feeling of not feeling safe leaving my house and just walking around my city. And it's so funny because being in the Netherlands only a month, I can walk around here wherever I want and I feel completely 100% safe. And it's such a relief to me that it's made everything really worth it. So the first thing I suggest when planning your move is to think about your why, because your why has to be important enough to you that it overcomes the fear of moving outside of your home country. Okay, so in December 2023, this is when things got real because I had to decide which country to move to. And the ultimate question here was, where could I get a visa? So there are three main ways to get a visa in most countries. That'll be a student visa, a work visa, or a freelancer or startup business visa. You might also hear about investment visas, but I don't have that kind of money, so this isn't going to be that kind of video. So when looking for countries to move to, I knew that I wanted to be in Europe and also that I wanted to go under the freelancer visa. And I'm not going to go into my whole process of choosing the Netherlands because I think that's very personal to each individual person. But for me, one of the top reasons why I chose the Netherlands is because they had something called the DAFT visa. And if you don't know what DAFT is, it stands for Dutch American Friendship Treaty. And basically it allows Americans to come to the Netherlands without any income requirements. You don't even have to have a business or currently be freelancing to get it. You basically come under the government's assumption that you'll start your business or you'll start freelancing once you get here. So literally, you don't need a job, you don't need income, you don't need any kind of diploma or degree requirements or any special skills at all. You just need to come over. So it's literally, when I say it's the easiest visa for Americans to get, it's literally the easiest visa. And I also feel like it rarely gets talked about, which to me is a real disservice to anyone from the US that wants to move abroad. So I will be making a video on that really soon if you're interested. So anyways, once I had my country and visa down, it was time for me to get an actual job so I could make money once I moved. So at this stage, I knew that I had to get a remote freelancing job so that I could qualify for the visa. And I'm sure that you all know that finding a remote job is not the easiest thing in the world. In fact, it was pretty difficult, but I do have some tips for you if you're looking to go this route. So when I first started looking for remote freelancer positions in November, I was having a really hard time, and I was looking on sites like Indeed and pretty much getting nowhere. So in December, I decided to shift my focus and look in forums and also weirdly Reddit. So I looked through the digital nomad subreddits that had something to do with the job field that I was applying for, and also just plain old Google, and I looked up companies that were hiring for remote positions, but then, like everyone does nowadays, I put Reddit at the end. So by doing this, I was able to find a few Reddit posts that mentioned companies that were hiring for the job field that I was looking for. And so I ended up applying to those companies, interviewing a few weeks later, and then having the jobs that I currently do today. Oh, and if you are American, then one thing to keep in mind is that you should be looking for positions that are I-9 positions, because those are recognized as being freelancer positions from the government. And a W-2 position is recognized as not being freelancer. I don't know what it's called. You're actually employed by that company. So you want to be looking for I-9 positions. You won't get the healthcare of a W-2 position, but you're not going to be in the US anyway, so it doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, an I-9 position is what will get you a freelancer visa. So some options for remote work that are relatively low entry and pretty easy to find are personal assistant or executive assistant work, which is what I do, data entry, remote sales, tutoring, which is a really popular one. And also, if you're a former teacher, then you can also do remote curriculum development as well. Okay, so hopping to February 2024, now I knew that I was gonna go to the Netherlands. I had a job, and so now it was time to book my flight. And to me, the most important thing here was to book the cheapest flight possible. So that's why I booked so far in advance. And I think my flight was only $250, I want to say, one way. But I'll get the exact number for you and maybe put it up here. And my ticket came with one piece of checked luggage and one piece of carry-on luggage, but I also purchased another checked bag as well. And next, I had to get my documents apostilled. So if you're anything like me, you had no idea what the word apostille means. And yeah, I literally, when I saw that I had to get my documents apostilled, I had no idea what anyone was talking about. And this is the number one mistake that I made when moving to the Netherlands. So getting your documents apostilled means that your important documents like your birth certificate, if you have a marriage certificate or a divorce certificate, you have to get those documents apostilled in the US in order for foreign governments to recognize them as legal documents. Because if you don't, then if you go to another country, they might look at your birth certificate and not accept it. So it's really, really important to get this done. And to do this, you'll go on the government website where you got that document. So for example, I was born in California, so I had to go on California's website in the county that I was born and basically figure out how to get my original birth certificate apostilled. And for me, what that entailed is mailing my original birth certificate to that county and then having them process it and put a stamp on it, apostille it, and then send it back to me. So the problem here is that this is the government. And so they can take a very, very long time to do this. I've seen people wait upwards of 6 months to get this done. And so for me, I was pretty lucky. I did this in February and I ended up getting my documents back at the end of June, which is still a really long time. So I would suggest that as soon as you know that you're going to be moving overseas, immediately apostille your documents. So from March to May 2024, this was kind of a blur because I was living in Chicago at the time and I was just packing up my apartment, selling everything, giving everything away that I owned that I couldn't fit in my car. Because in May 2024, I ended up moving back with my parents in Virginia. So the end of May 2024, basically June 2024 at this point, I ended up moving back in with my parents in Virginia in order to get some more quality time with my family, but also to save money. And so this is another really big tip, is that if you're fortunate enough to have family or someone that you can stay with for a couple of months to not pay rent or at least severely reduce your rent so that you can save more money, then that'll help a lot. And also, I think that it really helps with homesickness as well, because I spent the whole summer with my parents, and by the end of it, I was ready to leave. So, that helps. Also in June, I secured my apartment in the Netherlands. So this might be different for you depending on where you go. You might be able to secure your apartment in the month that you move. But for me, I had to secure my apartment as soon as possible, even though I wasn't going to actually move to the Netherlands until the end of August. And this is because the Netherlands has a horrendous housing crisis. And yes, I know everywhere is in a housing crisis right now, but this is like a housing crisis on steroids. So I can honestly do a whole nother video on how I found housing here. But here are some of the most important things that enabled me to actually find a place while still living abroad. So 1, persistence. I started looking for an apartment back in March, and it took me until June to actually secure a place. So no matter what, I just kept looking. I was contacting different real estate agents that were telling me that it wasn't possible, that they're not allowed to rent to people that are living overseas if they currently aren't in the country. But eventually I found something. 2, I also had a backlog of my invoices to prove that I had a steady income. And 3, I had really, really low criteria. So basically, I just needed it to have 4 walls and to be safe. And that's pretty much it. And to not be a cardboard box, basically. And yeah, especially if you're looking in the Netherlands, you can't be too picky, and I wasn't. So in July 2024, this is when I ended up doing 2 big things. I sent in my DAF visa application, which you can't do until about 3 to 4 weeks before you actually make your move. And I also ended up getting a cell phone plan. So my situation with my cell phone plan is probably going to be different than the majority of people out there. But for me, I need to be able to still have phone calls with my clients in the US. And so I have to pay a lot of money to have an international phone plan. But for the majority of people out there, you can probably port your number into Google Voice and get a really cheap phone plan overseas. But I would suggest that you figure that out before you move, because in order to port your number into Google, you have to still be living in the US, in your home country. Or else, once you end your phone plan, you can't get your number back if you wanted to keep that number. Okay, August 2024. This is when I made the big move. And you know how I said that I sold everything or gave everything away in Chicago besides what I could keep in my car? Yeah, I still had a bunch of stuff that I brought with me in my car. So I gave most of that to my parents, and then I still was left with a lot. And so I had to do another purge of things that I was either giving away or selling off. And this is a huge money saving tip. Do not ship your items. It's way too expensive. And so the sad part is, if you are attached to your material things, you are going to have to give a lot of them away. Or there are some people that want to keep their things in storage in case they don't have a good time overseas and they want to come back to something and not have given everything away. But I would caution you on that as well. Maybe only do it for a year. And then after that, get rid of the storage unit, because it ends up also being very expensive. So in August, pretty much emotionally, everything just felt very surreal, and I was kind of just going through the motions. It didn't feel real that I was moving overseas within a couple of weeks. But I tried to, as much as I could, stay in the moment and try and stay present. But I literally remember the day that I got on the plane. It was just like, oh yeah, I guess I'm moving to the Netherlands, and I will be there tomorrow and for the foreseeable future. And like, it was like a deer in headlights of just like, yeah, I'm doing this. So yeah, for me, it was very overwhelming. But yeah, I think that that's completely normal, and whatever you're feeling at the time is okay. It is a very big thing to do, and not a lot of people do it. So you'll probably have some crazy emotions. And finally, I just have a couple of tips for you to maybe make things a bit easier. And I'm sure that you've already thought about this, but you really do need to make a budget and try and stick to it as much as you can before you make the move. And I'm not saying here that you need to go crazy or really create anxiety for yourself over this, because when it's time to actually make the move, you probably won't feel like you saved enough money, even if you did save all year. And the past year, I made a lot of sacrifices. I saved a lot of money, and I actually exceeded the goal that I had for myself. But I still felt like I didn't have enough when it came time for the actual move. It kind of felt like the scenario of how much underwear do you pack for a 3-day trip? And so logically, you know that you only need maybe 6 pairs. But the anxiety part of your brain tells you, no, you don't just need 6, you need the whole drawer. And so you end up packing all your underwear, but it still doesn't feel like enough. And hopefully this analogy is making sense right now. It isn't like totally weird. But what I'm trying to say is that no matter how much money you save, it'll probably not feel like enough. But as long as you make the goal that you set out for yourself, and you make your budget and can pay for the essentials, then you're fine. And just like the underwear, it's probably enough. And finally, at the end of the day, just do it. If you want to make the move, then just make the move. You can always go back home if you don't like it. Because here's the truth, moving out of the US isn't as hard as you think it is. But it does take a plan and action, and not just thoughts that spiral into complacency or worry. And you can never get the experience of living abroad if you never do it. And I know it's scary, but honestly, the best things in life are. But just know, if you really want to make this move, then I believe in you. And if you need any help planning things out, then I'm always here. You can feel free to comment, and I'll try and answer any questions that you have, or even DM me if you want. But yeah, I hope that this helped, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.